Hello and welcome to the Life Burst podcast. I'm one of your hosts here, Andrew.
Hi, I'm Tiffany. Welcome. Bienvenidos.
Hello, Tiffany. Well, so Tiffany, how was your Wixoss week?
It was good. We just got back from one of our locals. I ended up getting second place, and I was playing DJ Lovett, actually.
Yes, DJ Love It.
It was pretty fun.
Yeah.
What about you?
I was, since you asked, I was playing No Limit. We only had four, what is the card's name? I was going to say Osaga Getsune, but that's
Ogata
not
Getsune?
Yeah, it's Ogata Getsune. As we learned from the recent mini episode for thinking our 250 selector special.
Yeah, which if you guys haven't listened to that episode, it's kind of a riot.
It is.
It's a good time.
It is pretty fun. And yeah, so we only had 4, and I wanted to run Bang, but Bang requires 4, and your Love It required 2. So we didn't have enough for that. So instead I ran No Limit, just casual No Limit. Did the job fine, took 3rd place.
Yeah, not bad.
I was gonna talk and then I just coughed. I'm glad everyone got the ASMR of me breathing too quickly.
We're so sorry.
I'm so sorry, guys. But today our topic, what is it, Tiffany?
Today we're going to be talking about colors.
Wow,
Wow.
Prismatic Diva, Chromatic Diva.
That's not yet.
All right, that's not. Yeah, that's
Is that the upcoming set?
in Japan.
Oh, so not for a long time for us.
Colorful Wish. That's another piece that's coming out.
Oh,
Cool.
that's fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, today we're going to be talking about colors. We're going to be talking about color identity, kind of what they do, how you can manage them in your deck, and just kind of our general thoughts on it.
We might even rank the colors at the end, decide what currently is the best colors versus what.
Ooh, that's going to be hot takes.
I know.
Hot takes at the end.
So here you go. Make a prediction down below what you think it's going to be, and then comment on that prediction when you get to the very end about how wrong we are.
All right. The challenge has been set. If that's something you guys are interested in listening to, I cannot talk today.
So something interesting is the colors of Wheatcross. A lot of games have certain flavors of their color that are like, raspberry and cinnamon and no, that's the wrong flavor. More like having a.
Where's my guards? Hold on.
It's got put away. That was the last podcast. You missed it.
No, I'm taking it back. Continue.
No. So the other card games have flavors of, like, for example, white might be the color of order and protection. So they have angels, and red is all fiery. So they get all these demons and devils and stuff. We cross kind of, I mean, like it, I've been told in a recent comments that it wasn't always like that. It was actually quite often that they had very rigid, angels were only in white. But lately they explore that flavor a lot, right? You can find angels in all different colors. You can find demons in all different colors. And
Terror beasts.
yeah, and I think they still centralize a little bit in some, right? Like Terror beasts generally centralize in red and green, whereas the aquatic beasts generally end up in green, blue, and white.
Yeah.
To different levels, But realistically, the most quote-unquote color identity that you can derive from these cards are from their actual mechanics or what the card does. And that's something we're gonna talk about.
Woo!
We're gonna break them down into a couple different subjects. What are those subjects that we're doing?
Red, green, blue, black.
Yes.
The colors.
Yes. We are breaking them down to the colors, but how do we define the color identities, you might ask? And Tiffany's got an answer.
Well, you could break it down into speed, mechanics, card advantage, removal, and life bursts.
Yeah. And you might think this is a pretty basic subject to talk about. You might be playing Wheatcross for quite a while. You're a Wheatcross connoisseur. But something you might not be thinking about is, what if you start dream team breaking, right? You're breaking teams and you want to make your own dream team. Well, you might want to use some ideas that you get from this episode to go, well, if I'm making a big green deck where it's got Team Pump in it, What other colors like Team Pump? Oh, maybe red does. Oh, maybe white has a little bit of it.
Just a little bit, yeah.
So maybe when I'm making a dream team, I should look at those assists. You know, and that can help you out get a more fuller experience when you're doing the deck construction.
So let's start off with speed. What do you think is like the fastest color?
Oh, that's red without any question. Yeah.
I mean, especially with like, you know, the legendary Center Harana No Limit. That's the fastest deck. You almost never go to time with that deck.
Yeah. And I think that's pretty true across all the formats too. I was reading an article about the what do you call it? The All-Star format. And one of the things that happens is you find that so in that format you can grow past level 3. You can go all the way up to 5.
Yeah.
What the cool thing is there are L rigs that are called 2 stops or 3 stops, and they stop at 2 or they stop at 3. That's their whole gimmick, right? Gives more deck room in the L rig deck to put other things in there that can help you, like arts. So you'll find out that most of the 2-stop, 3-stop L rigs are red and black. Those are like the 2 fastest colors.
Gotcha. So black would be the second fastest.
I think so, right? Like it lacks that early game removal that red has, but it has like end game removal in spades.
That is true. That is very true. It definitely, it's kind of like a locomotive, right? Like it kind of takes a little bit of time to get started, and then when it's chugging along, it's really chugging along. Right? Let's see. What would you think is the third fastest? Do you think it would be white, or do you think it would be green?
I think white.
You think so?
Be here. Yeah, because it sort of has an equal parts of I bounce or something and I attack. That allows me to attack pretty heavily. Look at like Akino does that kind of thing. Akino's line is pretty aggressive when you really think about it. I know she's supposed to be a defensive L rig, like in the show and everything. She's pretty aggressive.
You think so?
Yeah, I mean she gets you guards, which is cool. But you're blowing through your guards to basically try to get the game over quicker. And her 2 other things are bounce. And bounce is kind of weird. Innately, you want to kill the opponent before they're able to really replay the things that you bounced, right? You're not getting rid of the problem permanently.
You're just putting it off.
Yeah, you're delaying it.
I suppose so. I just kind of feel like green could be faster than white, but then when you think about lineups, like definitely, I mean, okay, if we're going to talk about Akino going up against Bang, I feel like Bang might be able to go a little faster. But when you look into the future with like a center Nova blows Akino's speed out of the water. Yeah. And I don't think many decks that are not white would be able to keep up with Nova, except for No Limit.
Nova gets on board, but it's slow. It clogs the board up. I hear what you're saying, but like if you look at the white assists, there's so many white assists that open up lanes, and then you look at how many green assists open up lanes.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah. Yeah, green's definitely much more of like
prevent damage,
a heavier
right?
assist color with preventing damage or pumping up and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess you're right. White would take the third spot, which I suppose would then be closely followed by green.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, it's a little bit more like, it feels like a more like blocky-ish kind of a vibe.
When you take like white and green decks and mash them together, you end up having these like walls that want to brawl.
Yeah.
Vibe, right?
Yeah, wall and brawl is a good way to think about it. Like, not super fast, but when they throw a punch, you're getting smacked.
Yeah.
And probably not going to do much when you punch back.
So then you think blue is probably the slowest?
I would say so. I mean, blue's kind of the definition of slow when you think about how the freeze mechanic is mostly in blue.
It's true.
So it just is like, I'm not slow, I will stop completely. Yeah, like, I'm just going to stop everything.
You're right.
Everybody freeze.
When you think about all the mechanics that are in blue, you're like, oh yeah, these don't really open up. These aren't really lane opening up. These are just, hold up.
Hold up.
Hold on a second.
Objection.
Yeah.
Yeah, which isn't a bad thing. Like, speed doesn't necessarily mean, like, if I have the fastest deck, it's the best deck. That's not true. Because blue definitely has its time to shine. especially if you're going up against a deck that loses steam
Yeah.
at the very end. So, like, if you're going up against Card Jockey always flounders after, like, turn 4. So if you've got, like, if you have, like, a center Tamago, that usually tends to do pretty well against Card Jockey if it lasts longer than turn 4.
Yeah, I mean, like, so for example, and that kind of makes sense too if you think
It's like
about
a game of attrition.
If you think about like Uchu no Hajimari versus like Diagram, right? Diagram is pretty slow, but it's not the slowest.
Yeah.
It's using 2 of the slowest colors, but the black is kind of adding this like speed to it, which is why I usually classify as a mid-range deck. Whereas like Uchu is almost always a control deck, and it's because it's using the 3 slowest colors. Now I'm just realizing that right now.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, we always make jokes at our locals, like whenever somebody brings like an Uchu deck, or we're like, all right, this one's gonna go to time.
Yeah.
we're gonna have to really speed up this match. So, and then when people are playing No Limit, we're like, all right, so we're gonna have like 10 minutes of extra time between rounds.
Or you end up with the like No Limit versus Uchu, and it's like, all right, so either this game's going to be very quick or it's going to be very long.
Slow,
and only slow for one person, right? The other person's just going to have to sit there and think about getting a hot dog or something.
Yeah, that's true. So going into mechanics, we kind of mentioned it already, but what would you say are the main mechanics for Red?
Red? So Red has a bunch of early game lane clearing, right? That's just
Due
one
to
thing
its speed,
that they do. And we can talk more about their actual removal, like the details of the removal in a second. Because like all colors end up getting removal, but they get access to different types of removal. But I think, yeah, like anything that can move its speed along is always really good. Like one of the things that I really want in Red, and it seems like it kind of exists there, very tertiary, is like Assassin.
That seems to be the favorite ability of sorts.
It does, but it also gets Double Crush, right? Like it gets more Double Crush than it gets Assassin. And Double Crush, it exemplifies Red's just trying to like end this game quickly. So I would say Double Crush is one of those things that exists primarily in Red.
I mean, look at Harana's ability, like Glory Grow, like.
Yeah.
It's the whole point of that team is Double Crush. And not to mention like pieces like Nobunaga that you can give it Double Crush.
Yeah.
Or I know there's another one. Maybe not, but there's a couple ones
there's a spell
else.
that does it.
Oh yeah,
the
there's
DJ
a spell
Lovett
that does
spell.
it. Yeah.
Harmony, something like that. I think that's one of those things. And like, look, there's been a game where I put out 2 Nobunagas with that my lanes were open from life bursts, and I gave them both Double Crush.
Ouch.
And then looked at my opponent and was like, got 1 removal, and was like, you can't deal with both of them. And like that is you're blowing
not unless you
through.
have like Akino Peace and you just want to stop that.
Yeah, like it's just like it is ridiculous, like the amount of aggression that can come out of a Red deck. Like most of the time you're like, all right, did I get to turn 3? Do I have at least 3 life cloth? Okay, I survive.
Yeah.
Right. Another thing that Red does really well is they often filter. Actually, they do a large amount of filtering where you're drawing and discarding.
Yeah, they do discard and draw. So a lot of the cards, like if we're gonna talk about, oh man. This is the thing that we're the worst at, you guys. It's the red card that when it comes into play you have to discard a card. It's the girl that looks like a boar.
Celadon.
Yeah, Celadon. So Celadon, you have to discard a card, but then when it's vanished you can draw a card. There's also Kagetsuchi, that is on enter you can discard 2 cards and draw 2 cards. Or no, it's discard 2 cards and then you can pick a level 3 out of your trash.
Yeah, you're thinking
that's more card filtering.
You're thinking about Tobiel does that, and also
Tobiel does the discard 2 draw 2.
So does whatchamacallit, Rose Quartz.
Yeah. So there is a surprising amount of card filtering. It's kind of like, it's more like you're trading.
Yeah, you're burning through your deck to try to get a better hand.
Yeah, exactly. Which is an interesting mechanic for Red.
Red's got some more weird stuff too that is more niche. Like for example, sometimes you crush your own life cloth for an effect. Yeah, that exists. I don't
Is
think
that
it's
coming
very
in the
good.
future?
No, it exists now.
What?
Yeah, there's one demon that came out in 03 that you crush your own life cloth.
Oh, that's
And
risky.
you can do stuff. Yeah, it's interesting. Red can sometimes play with some self harm, kind of mechanics. I guess we call them suicide mechanics.
Ooh. Yeah.
Well,
Well,
that's what they're
crushing your
called.
own life cloth is what we're talking
yeah.
about. Yeah. So giving up a life cloth to do something in the immediate moment.
Right.
That's also an interesting kind of card cycling. They also have, well, they in a lot of the life bursts, it'll be something like vanish target upped, or in the as far as like the vanishing goes, like if we're gonna look at Lancelot, it's usually this amount or less.
Yeah, so let's talk about removal then. That's a good one for red. Let's talk about removal. Red has a bunch of it.
Yeah.
You've got a lot of things that are, like you said, this much or less, right? And generally speaking, you can do 5,000 or less pretty easy in red. Then 8,000 or less becomes like a little bit more conditional. 12,000 or less or 10,000 or less becomes very like pretty hard to do, and like you're not getting anything on it.
Yeah, usually when you start getting up into like the 12,000 or less, it becomes more expensive to do because it's a little bit more of a reach. Meanwhile, the cheaper removal, so if we're going to be looking at Romail, which is the 3,000 or less, and then Lancelot, which is 5,000 or less, those are pretty cheap. So that's why it has all that like early game removal, and that's what makes it a faster deck.
And you know what? You're right to say that too. Generally speaking, red gets cheaper removal than the rest of the game does. Generally, their removal spells cost 1 or 2. That's it.
Yeah.
And then the life bursts, right? We've got some life bursts in red that also do vanishing of that type of thing, right? Sita, for example, vanishes 8,000 or less. You also, and that's really like, you also get some enter burn as their thing. Red does enter burn too. I forgot that.
Well,
that was
yeah,
the thing we should
there's
mention.
love it. It's a little bit more rare though.
Yeah, enter
It's
burn
one of
in
the
general
rarer
is a little bit
mechanics.
more rare.
Yeah.
But yeah, you got some life bursts that enter burn. And that's really about it when it comes to the playable life burst. Is bad. The playable life bursts in red, although you get some enter charge as well.
Yeah, that's another rare one. Or it might be like discard a card, draw a card, another one of those like filterings. But most often than not, if you're going to be vanishing a creature, a lot of the times it'll say vanish target upped Signy. Which can be a little tricky because sometimes you'll hit that right at the end of your opponent's Signy attack phase, which is like so disappointing.
Yeah. Seems like vanish target up centralizes mostly in white and red and a little bit in green.
Yeah. So those are kind of the main mechanics for red, which is probably why decks like Ascenter Hirana No Limit work so well, because a lot of those mechanics complement each other very well, but then when you add in the assists, it complements it even more.
Right.
So,
another reason why you don't want to be, generally speaking, monocolor in your deck building.
Lurigs. Yeah. So moving on to black, what are some of the main mechanics of black that we see? A lot of the times it's like filtering your deck into the trash, don't you think?
They play a lot with the trash, right? Like recursion from the trash, milling your thing into the trash, milling your opponent's deck is another one that they can do. And just to be clear here while we're talking, if there's anyone who doesn't know what milling is, it means making the opponent put more cards into their deck to their trash.
Yeah. So you're taking a lot of opportunities away from them.
Yeah. It also has a lot of sort of like, it actually has a fair amount of ambushing as well, where you like can pull things out of your trash and put it on the field temporarily.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't think about that one.
It's got some sacrifice effects too, where you're sacrificing Signy you control, hopefully for a benefit, things like that. And generally speaking, it also has some like, it mostly has a lot of Signy that have some kind of negative based thing attached to them.
Oh yeah, that's right. It's instead of being like vanish, like in red, how it's like vanish this or less. It's more like give target negative something.
Right. Which Might not straight up vanish, but it actually does help you win combat on your side. So so in some ways it's better, some ways it's worse than red, right? Because in some ways it still allows you to win a combat that you wouldn't likely be able to anyway. So you can take down walls that red can't do. But you're not getting that like easy get rid of effect.
Yeah,
But you could combine two to make it to make something. And
that's true. You can stack your minus XYZ effects on certain signies, which is good. But then you run into signies that like can flip that on its head. It's not a mechanic I actually see done very often, but it is helpful in the game. And when it's a mechanic that you can kind of like centralize around, you can become a like you said, like a mid-range, almost like kind of Wally kind of deck.
Black also gets some lesser used mechanics. Like, for example, you can manipulate your life cloth a little bit. I shouldn't say manipulate your life cloth. You can heal a little bit. Like green has it primarily, and we can talk about that in a second. But black actually has a fair amount of, or not yet, but it does have a fair amount in the history of Wixoss of being able to put a card into their life cloth. So they can do that. And that's another thing that black does. Another thing that black does is also augment signies a little bit. So
how so?
Things like giving out like quote unquote souls, which you'll see more in the
future.
Yeah, in the future.
Yeah.
But there's also like Nanashi does viruses. And like, your signy's on a lane that has a virus, and it does something because of that.
So so it's a little bit more about like Signy manipulation, field manipulation, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So what about some of the well, we talked a little bit about the removal, which is like giving certain things like minus, whatever.
Yeah.
Or saying that things have to go into the trash, which I guess you could say that making an opponent put something from the deck directly into the trash is a form of removal because you're taking those future opportunities away.
Milling them, right, is not necessarily straight up lane opening, but when lane open usually equates to damage, right? And milling your opponent to refresh is the best form of damage dealing in the game. Period.
Yeah.
It does not supply them with enter, and it also does not give them a life burst. So
the only double-edged sword of that is that you're basically giving them a whole new stack of options and opportunities to draw from again.
You're right.
But if you get that one refresh just to put them behind a little bit in tempo, it's not bad. I mean, that is kind of what the diagram deck was built around, really. Yeah. So that's why that deck works very well with itself.
As far as the life bursts go, a lot of it has to do with the trash, right? Like trash interaction. Bring mill two cards into your trash, then choose one signy, put one of them back into your hand.
That's right.
Put one signy back into the field from your trash. I think
that's what you were talking about with ambushing.
Yeah. I think that's what, like, for example, Anna Mirage, which is one of the best black cards that you can use, does. It grabs something from your trash and puts it onto the field.
Oof.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot that type of life burst exists in a lot of different decks, but in different ways, right? And the black deals with the trash for it.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Huh?
Yeah, I think that's generally speaking what
yeah, no, I think that's kind of what sets, even though the mechanics are similar, each color kind of has its own flavor of how it handles it.
Yeah, and I mean they use like removal too, right? Like kind of the same way that red does, where you might flip a life burst and says give target signy negative 7,000 till end of turn.
Yeah, so kind of similar to the vanish upped or vanish this much or less from red. Cool. So moving on to white, what kind of mechanics can we see in white?
I'm going to make a joke here, which is that literally every mechanic that you can see in every other color except better.
Ooh.
That's my hot take.
Wow, that is a very hot take.
Outside.
What do you mean by that?
Okay, guys.
Explain yourself.
There is, and I don't think it's actually that hot of a take. An idea that white is a little bit overpowered in Wixoss and has been for quite some time. And I would not say that that's the case right now in set 2 and earlier, but as soon as set 3 starts rolling in, there's a lot of good stuff coming in from white. And then like Tama comes in at some point is very good. Like it's just like adding white can give you a lot of varietied options, right? It has some of that aggression that you can then put into things like Akino to help support your red aggression. Or your black aggression, but it also has plenty of walling, stalling strats to help out blue or green-esque strategies. So, as I'm making a joke, it is that white can basically do a lot of the things that everyone else can do and do them somewhat better. The joke here is also that, like, for example, Madoka Clap is a pretty good card, but what if you don't even let them attack in the first place? Oh, you have Lion Disrespect, right? Like it's the same card, attack. But maybe in a different way. And like, oh well, that might be better because then that allows you to hit those vanish target up things, and oh, your thing happened to be up because it couldn't attack.
Right. I mean, I guess so. I only slightly respectfully disagree, just because it is kind of different. But white does get a pretty vast amount of options. The only one that I can't recall is I don't think it gets any sort of like attack power manipulation or like attack power based removal.
No, it doesn't. But it gets this non-conditional removal, that is, put that Signy in your trash or put that Signy in your hand. You know,
basically none of this is going to go into your enter I remove it.
It's like who cares about the size of that Signy? It's gone, you know.
I mean, it's nice. It's a pleasant surprise for sure.
It also gets Shadow is primarily in white.
Yeah, that's true. It does get Shadow primarily in white. Sample cards would be Arkwin as well as Zhao Yun.
Yeah,
the two probably the most recognized of the Shadow Signies. Or Signy's Second Shadow.
Yeah, and as far as card advantage goes, it usually does, I believe the term is cantrip, where you basically play something, pay a cost, and then sometimes you get to look at the top 3, sometimes you look at the top 5, sometimes you just draw off the top of your deck.
But you wouldn't call that filtering?
No, because you're replacing the card in your hand. Right? Filtering is you're playing something, and then you're drawing some cards and discarding some cards, but you go from 4 cards to 4 cards. Right?
Oh, I suppose so.
This, you're playing a card. This is your 4th card, so you'd be down 1, except it's paying for itself to bring another card back to your hand. So you've gained a card in the process.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? And
Card Jockey does that often.
Yeah, it's like almost impossible to keep Card Jockey's hand down to 0. Like they can, all they need to do is draw an Arcwane, right? Like they have 0 cards in hand, draw an Arcwane, put an Arcwane down, pay for the Arcwane, draw a Haniel, put the Haniel down, pay for the Haniel, they draw a 3rd Signy, they put it down. You're like, wait, I discarded your hand.
Well, the trade-off is that you're getting cards back into your hand, but you're paying the enter for it.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
White does, I feel like, have a little bit more like costs associated with some of its abilities.
I will also say that.
Especially when you're like getting a guard back, you know, you usually have to pay like 2 or more.
Which is also generally a white
also a white thing, is, you know, it's again kind of putting up those blocks without like directly removing your opponent's Signies. Like they're going backwards in the flow.
Yeah.
You know, they're not going from the field to the enter, they're going back into the hand. So. And
then there's also white does some lane switching on your side of the field. It can either jump away from attacks or jump to them in certain cases. Yeah,
that's a little bit more rare. Yeah, I would say.
Totally. It's I think more tertiary. I think green and blue has it more.
Yeah, for sure. There's at least like 2 cards that I can think of. One of them is Synforce that will switch in front of a Signy that's attacking, and then there's another one that will switch away.
Yeah. So let's see what else white has other than.
What about the life bursts?
Oh, that's a good question. Its life bursts are generally, we call it the Haniel life burst, or you can also call it lane cluttering or ambushing.
I would probably call it ambushing. It's a different kind of ambush as opposed to what black does, whereas black is kind of getting it back from the trash. White will probably get it back from your deck. So Hanniel's Life Burst, for example, is look at the top 3 cards and add a Signy from among them to your hand or onto the field.
Yeah.
So when I was playing in my locals today, I ended up getting back, I believe it was a projection map. So I put the projection map onto the field, and then I paid the 1, and then I got something else, and then that was back in my hand. So that's kind of how white likes to go.
Yeah, and something interesting about the ambushing is that black, generally speaking, they're things that come out of their field, come out of their trash. Usually say they don't trigger an enter ability, but white very rarely says that it doesn't trigger. It lets it trigger.
Usually
all the time.
it lets it trigger. If you could pay for it.
Yeah.
Its enter abilities will trigger.
It does. It does. Now that I'm thinking about it, white does seem more enter hungry than
It is.
most.
See, that's what I was saying is that
Little
you have
increments,
a lot of,
but yeah.
yeah, you have a lot of options, but you're going to have to pay for them. So I think that's kind of why, blue, green, and white tend to get along very well.
Another white life burst that see some amount of play, and it's pretty good, is the target Signy can't attack, draw a card.
Is that white?
Yeah, white gets that.
What card has that?
You can look it up. Sister Claire, for example, has one of
yeah.
those. But there's a few that are basically just you flip them and they say no, can't attack, draw a card.
Well, also sometimes you get the ones that are like choose one. So Arquin's Life Burst is choose one, either vanish target upped, which is a little bit of a harken back to red.
I think it's usually bounce target up for white.
Yeah,
Because
probably.
Arquine bounces.
Well, Arquin bounces, or it's draw a card, and you have to pick one of the two. So that's another sort of mechanic that you would see is like choose one or the other, which you do see in other colors, but obviously the choose one or whatever abilities, whichever one it is, they're definitely like flavored more towards that color. So going into red, or sorry, going into, I want to do it again.
More red.
More red. Going into green, let's talk about some of the green mechanics. I love playing green. I think it's one of the more fun colors to play, in my opinion, because I like big buff things.
Yeah.
And green does tend to buff things. It wants to, as far as attack power manipulation goes, it wants to plus things.
Yeah, and
it wants to say, give Signy's plus this, or whatever.
Yep, and you see that a little bit in red, and you see that a tiny bit in white. But yeah, it's mostly a green.
It's mostly a green thing.
Sometimes you can get them to astronomical levels. I've gotten a 26,000 Signy before.
Would you get that with like a green red like buffalo
combo? Buffalo, Fennec, and like an Osaga Getsoon, and then I sacrificed the Osaga Getsoon to put in like I think it was Osagetsun, and then I sacrificed that to put in like amino acid. Because I needed to reach an obscene number to beat a Musica deck a Madoka deck because they had Musica splits, and I needed to make sure my things could survive 15 K minus.
And you can also see this in the assists as well. So VJ Wolf Mirage, you can pay 0 to grow for Mirage, and it will give everything +5 or +5,000. So, it likes to buff, which is great, especially for things that are like Future Code, which is the piece that says that if any of your Signies are like 15,000 or more, they gain Lancer. So that's definitely one of the biggest mechanics I think you see in green.
I think the second biggest mechanic that you see in green is Enter Charge.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, let's look at Black Saddle, Osagetsun. There's a bunch of other ones.
Almost every green Elrig that you could play just enter
Flopsy.
Charges.
Yeah, all of these guys enter charge. It's definitely big green enter G.
Yeah.
That also goes for like the life burst as well. You'll definitely see like enter charge
in the
life burst for sure. It's
and
a really big
as far
theme.
as their card advantage goes, they usually nab cards from their enter, right? Like Flopsy's a good example. That Flopsy will get
Flopsy
a card
will
from
do
your
it.
enter.
weird bear. Nobody Betsu will do it. Also spells like progenitus.
Yeah.
Progenesis. Progenitus is the magic
Card that-
five-headed
yeah.
dragon. Sorry. Progenesis will get a green Signy back, or with Ancient Surprise, any Signy back from your enter.
Right. And it's actually kind of interesting that you bring up the no berry Betsu. It is secondary in one of the things that you thoroughly enjoy, which is lane switching.
Yeah.
And it not only lane switches yourself sometimes, it also lane switches your opponents. Right? Like Quinn will
Quinn
do
will
that.
do it. Not so much Robin Hood. Robin Hood is like the weirded ability green card.
Yeah, Robin Hood's weird.
It's weird. Yeah, no, that's another really great example.
Robin Hood's a great example for talking about removal, like what kind of removal it does. Sometimes when it does one primary form of removal, which is that it says vanish something X or higher, right? It's like the opposite of red. Mm-hmm. So 5,000 or more.
Yeah, it does like to do that, which it can be very frustrating because sometimes it'll say something like vanish something 12,000 or more, and you're like, what? Where am I gonna have this?
Yeah, right.
And it's for like instances where it's Osagesun that you could pump something, right?
You can pump your opponent's stuff to reach
so
that.
Then you could kind of use cards like that.
Yeah.
Or if you have something like up against like a Nobunaga or like a Chandelier, then that'll get those guys off the board too.
But also the second form of what they do is sometimes they don't talk about power whatsoever. They just remove whatever, but they just put it in the enter zone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what for example Robin Hood does. And what's interesting is Robin Hood's not even worded that it vanishes. It just puts them in the ender zone. Just go to the ender zone. You're not vanished, just go. It does the same effect.
That's
but
interesting,
it
because then if something has like a if vanished trigger, if it says it's not being vanished, it's just being put into the ender zone.
it's not vanished then.
Does
No.
the vanish trigger happen?
No.
I would say no as well. Ooh, tricksy. So that's the main mechanics, card advantage and removal. Let's talk about life bursts. I mean, obviously the enter charge is going to be in there. What other life bursts would you see in green? I'm kind of blanking on some of them. Definitely. Would it be draw
life
card?
bursts?
Yeah, for green.
Enter charge.
I just said that.
Yeah, you get a bunch.
Is
of
that
enter
it?
charge. Well, no, they have some removal like red, where it uses their primary version of removal, which says you can pay a green and then vanish something that's 8,000 or more.
Gotcha.
And then there is a bunch that are like enter charge 3, then choose up to one card and put that into your hand.
Oh.
So
I
there's
don't
that
think
kind of
they
thing.
have any sort of like. Well, they might have like enter charge draw card.
I think there's not any right now, but at some point there is some form of ambushing, which is but it takes it from your enter to ambush.
Gotcha. Cool. That would make sense for green.
Oh, and there's damage prevention.
Yes.
That's a big one that they
Bang
have.
de capo. Also, Mirage is definitely one of those things. Like anytime that it's just like you can prevent damage from happening, or next Signy damage, or just next any damage.
Sometimes they negate the attack. That's like a Kaiasumi thing, for example.
Sometimes they negate the attack. Sometimes they just say you won't take damage this turn. Or if you've got, I think it's VJ Wolf Sync. No, it's not Sync. What is it? It's the VJ Wolf level 2 that basically regrows a life cloth.
That's Sync, I think.
Is it Sync?
It's Sync, yeah.
Yeah, that's right. It is Sync. The other one's Laser that I'm thinking of. So that one, the way that prevents damage is it creates a buffer on your life cloth. Mm-hmm. So that's how I'm justifying that one.
And
as
green
damage.
also does gain access to that sort of regrow effect, recover effect that you can get on your field. I mean, you over there have achievement unlocked. You've had 8 life cloth in.
I don't even remember
game.
how I did that, but it is something that happened during the ceremony. It was a little like, am I going to do this now? Yeah, I guess I am.
Yeah. So Yeah, that's
That's green in a nutshell. So, last but not least, let's talk about baby blues.
Yeah. Oh, we also forgot to mention that green gets Lancer.
Oh yeah, that
Right,
is the other thing.
you said it very quickly, but yeah, green also generally speaking gets Lancer.
Yeah, that's the main like given ability that it likes.
And
is giving Lancers.
Yeah, it will punch through the Signy because they're like, I'm so big.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so like red usually gets assassin
And double crush.
and double crush.
Yeah.
And then lancer is usually given to green.
Yeah.
And I don't think I've seen any lancer in white
No.
at all.
Although from what I hear,
That usually gets shadow.
It used to be the thing that it got.
Oh.
Yeah. Again, white gets everything.
And then I think you can get assassin in black, but
It's actually blue that you can get assassin in the most.
is it?
As
What
weird
does
as
black
it is.
get? As far as like
Just-
bracket abilities.
Just negative to open up things.
Boo.
Yeah.
Boo. Black should get shadow too.
I agree with that.
All right. Moving on to baby blues.
Yeah.
Blue. Freeze.
That
Draws.
That is things that it does. Yes. It also gets discard. Don't forget that. That's
It does get
important one.
discard. That's right. Me discard. You discard. He, she, we, they discard.
We all discard.
We all discard. And then only you draw. If you're the one playing blue.
Yeah. Yeah. Blue does get a lot of draw effects. That
Mm-hmm.
is for sure. And they're the ones who really get mass draw, right? Like white gets like draw one or look at the top 5, pick a card, put it into your hand.
Yeah, you have to put whatever you pick back, but blue lets you keep it.
Yeah, blue's sort of like, that's fine. You can just draw 3. It's okay.
It's fine.
Whatever.
It's fine.
There's nothing like more soul crushing than like your opponent's out of cards in hand, you're out of cards in hand, and you're like, okay, this is just gonna be a grindy game. Whoever top decks the best, and then they go, I'll play trouble, I'll draw 3, and you're like, okay, yep, I'm losing this one now.
Or you get xenoclustered.
Yeah,
Or you have xenocluster, they try and discard you, and you're just like, nope, draw 3.
that is true. So you end up with a lot of dirtle effects. Is the right
Dirtle?
thing? Yeah, they're dirtling around. They're not winning the game. I mean, so blue gets access to one of the more powerful removal options in the game, which is bottoming a Signy, right? You can be like,
That's true.
that's a cool Signy. You can put not in your hand, not in the enter, not in
Not
the trash
even
where
on
you
the
can
top
get it.
of your deck.
It's on the bottom. Get
on
it.
the
It's gone
bottom.
for a while.
It's pretty much gone for the rest of the game.
Yeah.
Unless, like, you probably will never see that card again.
But that usually costs an obscene amount.
I mean, it should. You're basically taking it out of the game without
Like-
taking it out of the game because we don't have, like, exiling.
Yeah, New Ray is the only one that does it for like pretty cheap. And it's usually a one-time effect. It's not something you can like do multiple times. But they usually get freeze. Freeze is a big mechanic for them.
I feel like freeze is probably the mechanic that you'll hear about most associated with blue, other than drawing with discarding.
Yeah.
Which is it's different than red, for sure.
That's
So-
generally how they get their assassin on. Is they freeze something and then it's like, all right,
Oh
well, I
yeah,
can
and
now
then
assassin around it.
and then assassin around it. Or if you have assists like Umer Freeze and Umer Shatter, where Umer Freeze will obviously freeze stuff on the field, and then Umer Shatter will be like vanish frozen Signies or whatever. So you definitely get those mechanics. I don't think Ray has much freeze in her.
No.
It's a lot more. It's more like drawing cards and then
Drawing, discarding, doing things when she bottoms stuff.
Yeah, it has a
on
lot
when
to
she
do with
draws.
like stuff in the hand, basically.
Yeah.
Is where you're looking at your strong suits. And in terms of the flow, Ray's flow kind of centers in the hand. Like
Yeah.
that's where it's gonna be interacting with the most.
She's also a no limit thing, and no limit's just inherently a little bit more aggressive. So yeah,
Yeah, so
she's
that's how that
attacking
works.
resources like at the hand.
Meanwhile, when you have like Larigs like Tamago or Madoka, I do feel like you had built a Tamago freeze deck.
Yeah, and I think that's where freeze
was
currently
viable.
exists most naturally.
Yes. And then Madoka focuses much more heavily on the discard than the draw.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, Ray would be more on the draw than the discard. So that's kind of where it all kind of centers.
Yeah.
What else would it have? I mean, obviously card advantage would be coming from your drawing and discarding. You're increasing the tempo on your end because you're gaining more card advantage while also simultaneously making your opponent step back in speed by giving them card disadvantage. Now, as far as removal goes, we did kind of mention that, you could freeze something and then there could be a mechanic that's like freeze this, or another sort of subsequent mechanic would be like in Hijitaka, where doesn't it say like if you were to vanish something, opponent discards a card, isn't that right?
If it vanishes it through combat, yes.
Yeah. So you can have stuff like that where not only you're removing stuff in the field, or you're removing stuff from their hand. And then as far as life bursts go, it's definitely like draw a card.
Mostly draw cards or down target, Signy, freeze it.
Downing is a big one. I mean, if we're going to be talking about like folklore, that's how you say it, right? Folklore. Yeah, that's right. Okay. Our last podcast has me like really messed up in the brain now.
Yeah.
Folklore. So with folklore, it doesn't have any abilities on the card, but most people will put it in their decks because of the life burst.
It's got a very good life burst.
It's very good. You down 2 and you draw a card. What? You get to do 3 things with the life burst. That's absurd. You essentially get to prevent 2 damage and give yourself card advantage. Insane.
Yeah.
But yeah, downing things is another sort of mechanic. It's really trying to build you up to freezing more effectively. But it doesn't hurt for a little bit of
well, then it has a lot that are just straight up down a card, freeze it, and draw a card.
That's true. Also things like Bradamante.
Yeah.
Which has that like very specific ability.
Freeze, vanish, and draw, discard cards. Like that's what it wants to do.
A confusing card, but a powerful one for blue.
Yeah. So, yeah. Again, that's the mechanics in blue, and I think with that we've more or less come full circle on the whole identity of things.
So, what's your favorite color?
My favorite color?
Yeah.
Probably white.
Really?
Yeah, I like overpowered things.
White will overpower. Oh, I see. Because you think that you're getting more bang for your buck with the abilities?
Well, if I wanted to get more bang for my buck, I'd be playing green, right? Because that's got bang.
Because you'd be playing bang.
Yeah.
Ha ha.
What are some? Wixoss is not just a single color game.
There's variety. The spice of Wixoss.
It is the spice of Wixoss. Let's talk about mixing some colors up too.
I mean, we could look at some of the most successful teams and talk about why they work so well. So going into No Limit, No Limit being the fastest deck, we'll do the standard Harana Center, right?
I think the reason why that is it, right? It doesn't really play any blue. It
Not really
plays white and red. It's playing from those mechanics. And it's using white's sort of like unconditional removal to back its early
more
game
aggressive
to
red.
then go into a little bit of mid game and get the win there. So yeah, the white is used for that. Later down the line, you can also use red and black together to just go like, I'm going at a blinding speed here.
Yeah, for sure.
And then in
very aggressive.
In my Bang Dream team, the whole reason why I have red in it is because I started out going like, okay, well, Bang gives Lancer. Lancer wants to be on big things, which means I should do some Team Pump, and I can do that in green. I'm doing Team Pump now. What also likes Team Pump? Red. Red also does
That's
Team
true.
Pump stuff.
One of the I always forget about this, but a Harana Center will pump everything by 2.
Yeah.
So any attacking Signy gets pumped by 2. I forget that every single time I play that deck.
And one of the interesting things about it too is that like red and green's removal go hand in hand. There was a time where I actually used, this is one of my most favorite moments I've done. I used Osaka Getsune in the ceremony. No, not the ceremony. I used Osaka Getsune in a loot card tournament, and I made all of the things on my opponent's field 12,000 power. Right? And then I had Osaka Getsune and Buffalo. Buffalo vanishes 12,000 or less. Osaka Getsune vanishes 12,000 or more.
So you just had the entire field.
Yeah.
Like it covers everything.
Just did it to cover everything. And I was like, it doesn't matter what you vanish at this point. I'm still going to be able to open
I
the
do
lane.
think that red and green work spectacularly well because they focus so heavily on the field just in general, like what they can do with their signies and a little bit of what they can do with their opponent's signies as well.
And
it's
red
very
and blue,
complementary.
red and blue is an interesting combo as well, because even though we don't see it very much right now, theoretically what it does is it takes red's running out of gas problem and goes,
By
don't worry,
drawing.
I got you, and just draws you cards.
Yes, that's true. It's also very helpful for if you have something that's like discard and then draw a card and you have no cards to discard, and then you get a little blue, kind of refill your hand a little bit, and then you can kind of go from there.
Yeah.
So it's another very
And it helps
complementary
blue out
color.
by giving actual clocks to blue, which they tend to lack.
Clocks?
Yeah, clock, like it's like, oh, this is a countdown clock. I'm going to kill you in a certain amount of turns.
I suppose so.
Yeah.
I haven't heard that yet. Yeah, I guess that's a good one. What other complementary colors do we have? I think that green and white go pretty well together as well.
Well, yeah, sure. Why? Why do you say that?
Because I think that there's a lot of bouncing, and there's also a lot of like pumping. So you can pump up a signy and then bounce something else, which I do think works pretty well together. Plus, there is the filtering on the white side, which will help you get more signy onto the field. But I think the biggest thing that they are like complementing each other for is defense.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, preventing damage is a green thing, getting back guards and bouncing things is a white thing. So when you want like a beefy wall deck, green and white is probably your friend.
Yeah, I mean, putting Lancer on big white power is a good idea. Likewise, green defends, like with its damage prevention, very well for white to go a longer game that it can't normally do. Mm-hmm. I agree with that. What about, we talked about green and red. What about green and black?
Green and black.
I can speak to that one.
Sure.
So negative effects are usually smaller, and green usually handles big signy, so it does sort of the same thing that that red and green does. The other thing is shrinking your opponent's signy so that you can Lancer over them is also a valid strat.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
But generally speaking, green and black together end up being this sort of like attrition-ish thing where you can be like, I'm gonna last quite a long time here with this. And then if we take green and blue, I haven't really seen a ton of successful decks that are green and blue. I'm sure they exist. But they are pretty dirtle, right? Like you're being like, I'm freezing, and then anything that's not being frozen is going to try to connect with me through an open lane, but I'm doing damage prevention as well.
I mean, I think it depends. I think it depends on what you're focusing on in green and blue.
What, have you never been banged to capoed while the opponent was making you discard everything with a Tamago?
I mean, that will do it. They're not exactly complementary, but it sure helps.
Yeah.
It helps to get rid of somebody's hand while you're also preventing their damage. It's kind of like, why did I even play this turn? So, but I think that's our full list on color identities.
Yeah.
Wasn't there some hot takes you wanted to add at the end of this?
Yeah, what do you think, if you were going to rank the colors?
Oh, God.
What are you going to do? I'll do my rank so that you can think about it for a second.
All right.
But I think that right now, if I was going to say literally at this moment, I would say red, white, black, blue, green. That would be my ranking. And it's a toss-up. There's a lot of really good white cards. And if we're going to talk about set 3 and onwards, I think that then starts turning into white is the most powerful. But my dog is disagreeing with me by growling.
I also disagree with you.
But red, I just can't get over, things like Lancelot. Lancelot's just a ubiquitously great card.
Okay. Here's my list. I would say top to bottom. I would say red, blue, white and green kind of in the middle, and then black.
Okay.
And here's why. Because it's no secret that we feel like No Limit is one of the most aggressive decks in the format, which makes it a very strong contender in most scenarios. However, Madoka has really run up in the ranks as well. And
Sure.
I don't think that that's a secret. And I also think with the next set, Ray's also going to be a very popular choice. And both of those do give red a run for its money.
I will agree that blue gets better as of the next set.
And I do think that Bang is a great center, for sure. It's a lot of fun to play. VJ Wolf, not so much. Which we could talk about later in a different podcast.
Deck techs will be coming out next week.
Yeah, so look forward to those. Comment, like, subscribe. But also, Lion's not bad either. I don't know that Lion would necessarily be on the same level as, Madoka or Harana.
Sure, I agree
necessarily. I think it kind of struggles with those a bit. And Akino's not the best.
Sure.
Not optimal, really, but viable for sure. Kind of in the same way that, you give some, you can give and take with those two colors. And then as far as black goes, you could say Toko and Musica's not bad, but they're not the best when compared to the other spots,
Sure,
in my opinion.
I guess I'm not just looking at Elrics. I'm also looking at the cards, literal cards you play, and there's a lot of black that you're playing in Madoka.
I suppose so. I guess I was ranking it in terms of like thinking about the color's strength with the Elrics in mind, just because, and we've said this on multiple podcasts, is that when you're building a deck, you always have to keep the center in mind, and then you build
Sure.
off of that.
And if you want to know what the top 10 Elrics are,
You can
that's the
tune
topic
in
for next week.
So I think that's it for today.
Yeah,
Do
it
you
is.
have any closing thoughts? Let us know what you guys think as far as what your favorite colors are, how you'd rank them, and defend yourself in the comments down below.
Yeah. And as always, guys, may you always flip a life burst. Hopefully, folklore.
Hopefully folklore.
Flip folklore.
Bye.